The sound didn't make sense at first, the clatter of a fork hitting a plate, sharp enough to cut through the lazy brunch chatter around us. I didn't realize the fork was mine until I saw it lying in a smear of hollandaise, trembling slightly from the force of my hand dropping it. Or maybe my hand was what trembled. What did make sense, so clearly that it seared itself into the space behind my ribs, were the words that had just left Ethan's mouth. She's just my backup plan if my ex doesn't work out. Backup plan. My name was never spoken. He didn't have to. His ex, Marissa, didn't either. But the implication spread across the table like spilled wine, staining everything in its path. He said it casually, almost jokingly, to his friend Mark, who sat across from us in the small, sunlit bistro. The brunch crowd buzzed around us, dishes clinking, conversations overlapping, espresso machines hissing. Life continued, painfully indifferent to the collapse happening in my chest. I waited. Surely he would follow it with a laugh, a punchline, some acknowledgement of how cruel that sentence sounded. Maybe I misheard. Maybe. But Ethan didn't backtrack. He just reached for his mimosa like he hadn't detonated a grenade between us. Mark's uncomfortable half-laugh flickered out as soon as he glanced at me. Then he cleared his throat and stared very intently at the water glass in front of him. I wanted to speak. To yell. To demand an explanation so loud the entire restaurant turned its head. But my body betrayed me. My throat constricted, breath turning shallow. My palms grew slick against the linen napkin in my lap. I felt suddenly, horribly outside of myself, like I was watching a scene through someone else's eyes. Backup plan. There was something almost clinical in the way the words rearranged the last 9 months of my life. 9 months of late-night talks and inside jokes and slow, tender mornings tangled in sheets. 9 months of I love you, whispered against my neck like something sacred. 9 months of letting myself believe I had finally found a love that was safe. The waiter arrived with a plate of avocado toast for Mark, cheerfully unaware of the emotional carnage unfolding at table 17. The moment stretched, unbearably tight. Ethan didn't even look at me. He kept talking, about weekend plans, something about hiking, about a movie he wanted to see. But his voice blurred at the edges, warped like sound underwater. All I could hear was that one line, replaying itself in different tones, different interpretations, none of them less devastating. My heart beat too fast. Too hard. I stood without realizing I was moving, pushing my chair back with a screech. Both men froze. Hey, Ethan said, startled. Where are you? I need air. My voice cracked like thin glass. He reached out as if to take my hand, but I stepped back before he could touch me. The movement was instinctive, a recoil from something suddenly, terribly unfamiliar. Without another word, I turned and walked out onto the sidewalk, into the crisp bite of early autumn. The sharpness of the cold felt grounding, almost medicinal. Still, the world swayed at the edges. Behind me, I heard him call my name once. Just once. I didn't look back. I made it to the corner before my legs threatened to give out. Leaning against the rough brick of the boutique storefront, I pressed a trembling hand over my mouth to stop the sob clawing its way up. People passed by in a blur of coats and scarves. A dog barked. A cyclist whirred past. And I just stood there, trying to reconcile the man I thought I loved with the one who had just revealed himself. A backup plan. Like a spare tire. Like a second-choice dress. Like a safety net. Like something useful only in the absence of the thing he really wanted. When the glass door of the bistro finally swung open, I stiffened. Ethan jogged toward me, concern painted too neatly across his features. The sight of him made my stomach twist. Hey, he said, breathless. That didn't sound how I meant it. I stared at him, disbelief fizzing like electricity under my skin. How else could you possibly mean that? He winced. It was a stupid joke. It wasn't a joke, Ethan. You said it like it was nothing. It was nothing. He reached for me again, gentler this time. I flinched back. His hand dropped limply. Can we not do this out here? People are staring. They are not, I said flatly. But even if they were, why would that matter more than what you just said? He sighed, a weary, petulant sound. Come on. Let's go home and talk, okay? You're overreacting. That word snapped something fragile inside me. I'm not overreacting. My voice was steadier now, almost eerily calm. I'm reacting to being told I'm your consolation prize. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered. Guilt, irritation, something darker. I didn't call you that. You didn't have to. Silence stretched between us, thick as fog. For a split second, just one, I saw a flicker of panic in his expression. Something like fear of losing control. Then it vanished, smoothed over by practiced charm. Please, he said softly. Come home with me. Let's talk. I wanted to say no. I wanted to turn around, get in a cab, and never see him again. But beneath the fury, beneath the humiliation, beneath everything that should have propelled me away from him, there was something else. A need for answers. A need to understand whether the man I knew was real or just a carefully arranged facade. So I nodded once. His shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. We walked in silence to his car. My reflection in the passenger window looked pale, almost ghostly. When he started the engine, the radio came on, a soft indie song we used to hum while cooking dinner. He reached to turn it off, but the gesture came a beat too late. The sound of it hurt. The drive felt both too long and too short, my mind spiraling through memories now tainted with doubt. His phone face-up between us didn't help. Notifications lit the screen every few minutes. Names I recognized, names I didn't, messages previewed just long enough for me to catch brief glimpses. Last night, are you sure? She doesn't know. I didn't ask. Not yet. When we reached his apartment, he unlocked the door and motioned me inside like it was any other Sunday. But everything felt wrong. The air was too still. The shadows too long. The place that once felt like a second home now felt like a stranger's space wearing a familiar smile. I sat on the edge of the couch. He stood near the TV, hands on his hips. I shouldn't have said it, he began. It came out wrong. Why did you say it at all? He hesitated. I didn't want Mark thinking I was whipped or something. I blinked. So you'd rather he think I'm disposable? That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. No, he dragged a hand through his hair. Look, it's complicated. Then explain it. Another hesitation. A longer one. Then, I just haven't fully moved on from Marissa. Not completely. The words hit like a blow. He rushed on. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I do. Do you? I whispered. Or am I just filling space until she wants you back? That's not fair. What's not fair is you letting me believe I was enough, I said, voice shaking again. Letting me build my life around you while you, what? Kept the door open for her. He didn't deny it. That silence was its own confession. My heart thudded painfully. Were you seeing her? His eyes darted away. No. But the pause before the word told me everything I needed to know. Ethan, I said quietly, tell me the truth. His shoulders slumped. He looked suddenly small. We met for coffee a few times. Just to talk. When? Over the last couple months. Months. While we were planning a trip to California. While we were talking about moving in together. While he held me at night and told me I was home. The room swayed again. My voice came out raw. Did you sleep with her? No, another pause. Shorter this time, but still there. I closed my eyes. And in the darkness behind my lids, a memory flickered. The first time he told me he loved me, his voice trembling, his fingers pressed to my cheek like I was the most precious thing in the world. A moment I had replayed 100 times. Now it felt like a lie performed by someone who knew exactly what I wanted to hear. When I opened my eyes again, something inside me had shifted. You need to leave, he said suddenly. I stiffened. What? His expression hardened, resentment creeping into his features. If you're not going to calm down and talk rationally, I think you should go. Rationally. Backup plan. Coffee with his ex. Notifications with words like last night. I stood slowly, feeling an eerie calm settle over me. Okay, I said. I'll go. I walked toward the door. But as I passed the console table, a small glint caught my eye. A piece of paper, slightly tucked under a set of keys. A receipt. From a hotel. Yesterday's date. 1 room. 2 guests. My breath froze. And just like that, everything I thought I knew about him shattered so completely that the pieces would never fit together again. I turned to look at him. Ethan's face drained of color. "Don't," he whispered. But it was too late. I was already picking it up. Already reading the name signed at the bottom. Already feeling the world tilt violently beneath me. Already understanding that the brunch confession wasn't the beginning of betrayal. It was the finale. The ending he never intended for me to find. I read the receipt 3 times because the shape of the truth felt impossible. My fingers tightened around the paper until the edges bit into my palm. Yesterday. Room 412. 1 room. 2 guests. There was a hotel logo at the top I didn't recognize. Cheap enough to be anonymous, polished enough to buy privacy. The total was small, as if to suggest nothing happened at all. As if money could disguise what it paid for. A night, a bed, a decision. Ethan watched me, his mouth raw with something that could be guilt or regret or the fatigue of being caught. The apartment felt suddenly too bright, every light exposing what was hidden beneath the surface. "Explain," I said. My voice had thinned into something sharp and brittle. He stared at the receipt as if it were a foreign script. He swallowed. It's not what you think." "Not what I think." The phrase was both plea and deflection, a small, desperate tether thrown across the widening distance between us. "Then tell me what it is," I snapped. "Because right now it reads like a very bad chapter in the book of us." He pinched the bridge of his nose, eyes closed. For a beat he looked so exhausted I felt a flicker of pity, not for him, for what he'd done to both of us. "We met," he said finally, "to talk." It was tense. She wanted closure. I didn't want to lead her on. He looked at me, pleading for belief. "I swear, I didn't sleep with her." The words landed, brittle and thin. I tried to catch them with something in me that still wanted to believe. But the receipt stared up like proof beyond a shadow of argument. The messages on his phone, the ones I hadn't asked to see, sudden images. "Are you sure? Don't get attached. He's not over her." They were a pattern, a map I hadn't wanted to read. "Then why a hotel?" I asked. "Why yesterday? Why 1 room for 2 people if everything was innocent?" He flinched. "We needed privacy. It was in the middle of the day." "In the middle of the day?" I repeated, incredulous. "You checked into a hotel in the middle of the day to talk? Do you think I'm stupid?" I watched his face change. Defensiveness, shame, resignation. I thought it would be less dramatic than meeting at a cafe. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. I didn't think." "You didn't think." The refrain echoed. What he hadn't thought through was the moral arithmetic. How to weigh the past against the present. How a man could tell someone he loves them and still maintain a backdoor. "You didn't think about me," I said. "You didn't think about our plans, about the promises you made." He looked at me with a quick, animal desperation. "I love you," he said again. "I do. She's part of my past. She's complicated. I should have been clearer with you. I should have." His hands shook now. "I didn't want to lose you." "Then why?" The question wasn't only about the hotel. It was about the slow erosion. The late texts, the unexplained absences, the times he'd seemed elsewhere even while sitting beside me. He said nothing for a long time. The apartment hummed, a refrigerator, the distant city noise like a breathing organism. I tried to summon the memory of him, the man who once left love notes in my coat pockets, who kissed me awake like a benediction. It felt like trying to hold water in cupped hands. Finally he spoke. "She called me. She wanted to see me. She said she was pregnant." The name Marissa landed in the room like a presence at the table, heavy and impossible to ignore. My pulse stuttered. Pregnant. I let the word rotate in the air as if it were a brick. "Whose?" His face crumpled. "She didn't say. She cried. She said she could use help. I met her because I didn't know what else to do." My chest tightened until I could barely draw air. The rational part of me raced to calculate possibilities. A prank, a test, a lie. But the rest of me, the wounded animal, felt something sharp and animal and honest. The recognition that men who keep doors open don't usually do it because they're noble. So you met her? In a hotel. Yesterday. To talk about a pregnancy. Alone. In a bed, I said. And you expect me to stay? He closed his eyes. No. I don't expect anything. I just want to be honest now. Honesty arrived late, like a delayed courier. You've been planning things with her, I said. My calendar still has the dates we talked about. You were making lists. She was, what? Pushing? Waiting. He opened his mouth and closed it. She's complicated, he said at last. She wanted him back. She thought maybe I still had feelings. I told her I didn't. I told her I loved you. But I also didn't want to be cruel. I'm not the cruel one here, I said. You are. He flinched, as if struck. The conversation spiraled, then steadied into a brittle rhythm. Accusation, deflection, confession, apology. Each admission widened the wound. Each attempt to explain felt like pouring salt into it. At one point he reached for me, fingers hovering as if unsure whether my skin would accept them. Please, he said, voice small. I can be better. I can. You can be better, I echoed. Or you can be honest now. Who were you with last night? He inhaled, as if the question itself were a physical force. No one, he said. I was at a bar. I drank. I thought about, he trailed off, jaw clenched. I thought about who I wanted to be. You thought about abandoning me, I said softly. My voice felt foreign in my mouth. You thought about someone else while you were with me. You're making it sound worse. He rubbed his temples. I love you. I promise. Promises had become a kind of currency between us, spent recklessly, devalued by repetition. I felt like a miser who had finally counted his coins only to discover they were hollow. I wandered to the kitchen, needing the small domestic redundancies to anchor me. The kettle was half full. A mug sat drying on a towel, mine, with a chip on the rim from a night we'd laughed about. The ordinary familiarity of it all made the betrayal sharper, like the contrast between a labeled poison and a drink poured in the same glass. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Because he was afraid of losing me, because he wanted to keep options open, because humans are cowardly and selfish when the stakes are love. He followed me into the kitchen. I thought it would complicate things. I thought I could sort it out without hurting you. You hurt me by choosing not to tell me. The words came quicker now, tripping over a mixture of grief and anger that made my throat burn. He looked at me like someone trying to read a map in another language. I thought I was protecting you. You protected me by hiding it. I shook my head. Do you even hear yourself? He flinched, the sound of my words hitting him like a physical thing. We went on like that for hours, each confession peeling back another layer. There were details, messages, meetings, blurred moments. There were truths he insisted on, no physical intimacy, a line he claimed not to have crossed, and truths he revealed reluctantly. The number of times Marissa had called late, the mention of a maybe pregnancy, the account of her showing up at his office drunk and needing a place to go. I kept wanting to stop him, to demand he erase every mention of her from his life. But a part of me knew that erasure was impossible. People leave marks on us. Some are scars, others faint lines. You can try to cover them, but they remain. Night settled outside like a blanket. The apartment grew smaller as darkness folded into the corners. He moved like a man treading on cracked glass, careful, aching. At one point he touched my hand. It was a small, almost apologetic gesture, as if he weren't sure whether the contact was allowed. Do you still want me? He asked, eyes searching. The question was simple on the surface, but the answer was a landscape of contradictions. I wanted to say yes, because of 1,000 small moments that had felt like everything. I wanted to say no, because trust when broken is not always repairable. I wanted to say I didn't know. I want to know why, I said. I want to know which life you see when you close your eyes. Is it mine? Or hers? He hesitated. It's mine, he said finally. It's complicated, but it's mine. He said more, about how the past can cling, about how he'd been reckless, about how he'd failed to imagine the damage his silence would cause. There were tears, real and hot, and for a moment I let myself consider the possibility of forgiveness. Not because his tears willed it, but because love is stubborn in the face of ruin. But then, as the darkness deepened and the city sighed outside, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. I ignored it at first, then reached over. A message preview lit the screen. I'm at the clinic. Can you come? The sender. A name I didn't know, but the number matched one of the late-night threads on Ethan's phone. My stomach flipped. The message had been sent 2 hours ago. I showed Ethan the screen. His face went ashen, and for the first time all evening I saw panic without the sheen of charm. I told her not to do anything rash, he said. I told her to wait to tell me more. Wait, I repeated. Wait for what? For you to choose. He opened and closed his mouth. I tried to prevent it. Prevent it. The word felt grotesque in the small kitchen. Prevent a person from making choices about their body. Prevent consequences. Prevent whatever it was that had been in motion for months. You knew enough to meet her in a hotel, I said. You knew enough to be involved. Enough to check into a room. Enough to be present. He sank onto a stool, burying his face in his hands. For a long time neither of us spoke. The apartment filled with the sound of the city and the far-off rhythm of other people's lives continuing unperturbed. I should go, I said at last. He looked up. Where? Out. Away. I don't know. The uncertainty of it felt both terrifying and oddly liberating. For the first time, the future opened in jagged possibilities instead of a smooth path laid out with his plans. He stood. Please don't leave like this. I'm not sure how to leave, I said. Not right now. He moved closer again, closing the distance as if proximity could mend the rupture. But as he reached for me, my eyes landed on something else. An airline itinerary tucked under a stack of mail. The destination was San Francisco. The date, 2 weeks from now, matched the trip we'd been planning together. The name on the reservation, Marissa. I held it up like a talisman. Who booked this? He went still. The answer could have rewritten everything. His silence did it for him. Part of me wanted to tell you, he whispered, but I didn't know how. The words could be an apology or an explanation. Either way, they weren't enough. I left that night with nothing but a small bag and a pair of shoes and the shape of a man I'd loved, now mostly stranger. The elevator ride down felt like a descent into a different life. The lobby smelled of citrus and cheap perfume. Outside, the city breathed cold and indifferent. As I walked away, the weight of the receipts and messages and itineraries pressed in my pockets like physical proof. Each step blurred with tears I hadn't let myself fall in front of him. Salty evidence for the self I'd assumed would endure. When I reached the corner, I turned once, not to go back, but to see him in the doorway, a figure suddenly small and stranded beneath the apartment lights. He raised a hand, a silent plea. I kept walking. Ahead, the street stretched open, possibility and pain braided together. Behind me, the apartment light went out as he closed the door. I didn't know what the morning would bring. I only knew this. The world as I'd known it had ended. What waited was messy, unpredictable, maybe unavoidable. Conversations, confrontations, decisions that would force us to choose between the comfort of familiarity and the terror of truth. And somewhere inside the city's pulse, a woman at a clinic had just sent a message that might change everything again. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and lemon, and the single too-bright fluorescent bulb over the reception desk hummed a little like a single, tired insect. People sat in chairs that folded when you stood up. A TV in the corner looped a health PSA about prenatal vitamins with inoffensive cheer. My hands were numb from the cold and from the tremor that never quite left them. The receipt, the itinerary, the messages, they felt heavy in my bag like stones I had not yet decided what to do with. I told myself I was here for answers. The truth has a way of arriving messy and unexpected. I wanted to meet it, not let it walk up behind me and strike. Marissa was sitting on a vinyl chair with her legs crossed, phone in one hand, coffee in the other. Up close, she looked younger than her pictures had suggested, less sure in her jaw, more raw in the eyes. She looked up when I approached, and for a breathless second our faces were the same story told twice. Hurt, fear, and the slow bloom of indignation. "You're the one who sent the message," I said before I could think. The words came out thin, a blade with no handle. She put down the coffee. "I sent Ethan a message." Her voice was small but steady. "I didn't mean for you to read it. You knew he was with me." I kept my voice low. People glanced up. A nurse folded a paper in her lap. She shrugged. "I didn't know he'd say that at brunch. I didn't know he'd." "You met him in a hotel yesterday," I said. I held the receipt out like a damning photograph. Marissa didn't flinch. "Yes." "For what?" "To talk." She looked at me like she expected me to understand. "He said you two were serious. He said you were talking about moving in." I wanted clarity. I wanted to know if he could be trusted. "For what?" I echoed. "To you." "To both of us," she said. She swallowed. I got scared. Her admission was small, human. It should have been a bridge. Instead it felt like a widening chasm. "Were you pregnant?" The question ripped out of me before I could stop it. Her face went colorless. "No." No, the word landed like a poorly thrown stone. "So why the message? I'm at the clinic. Can you come?" She looked down at her hands, twisting them like a ribbon. I thought I was. I thought I might be. I needed to check. I needed him to know. A hush settled around her words. People in the waiting room returned to their devices, pretending not to listen. The PA system announced an appointment. The sound was oddly domestic, almost mocking. So it was a false alarm? I asked. She lifted her head. No. It was. Her eyes filled. It was complicated. I wanted him to choose. I wanted to see if he would step up. I thought if he did, maybe there was a reason to try. Several breaths later, I pushed my chair back and left. The corridor smelled of bleach and rubber. My phone buzzed, another message from an unknown number that matched Ethan's late-night threads. I ignored it. I didn't want to see his digital calluses just yet. I went into a small, sterile room and shut the door. The paper sheeting crinkled beneath me. The chair was cold. There were brochures about choices and support and options, black and white solutions to something that was rarely black or white. I told myself, answers. I did not intend to sob, but when the nurse came in with the little white stick I realized my whole body had been bracing for the result whether I intended to be or not. My fingers shook as I turned it, breath held like a held animal. 2 pink lines. For a second the world condensed to the little plastic instrument in my hand. The lines were not blurry. They were solid, insistent. They did not care what Ethan had done or not done. I sat very still. I had not planned for this. Not now. Not with the ground under me eroding like wet sand. Yet there it was, a tiny, impossible proof that something else existed inside me. Silent, secret, middling between terror and wonder. I thought of the nights Ethan had laughed, the nights he'd promised me the world in the soft, private dark. I thought of the itinerary with Marissa's name tucked under his bills. I thought of the hotel receipt like a punch to the stomach. I thought of Mark's embarrassed face at brunch, at the fork he'd watched fall from my limp fingers. I folded the test into a tissue like a muttered prayer and took it with me when I left. The clinic smelled the same, but the city outside felt like a different planet. Headlights smeared gold, the damp sheen of pavement reflecting neon. The air hit me in the lungs and I tried to decide whether it was cleansing or just another cold. Ethan answered the phone on the second ring. His voice had that rehearsed calm, like a man who'd practiced shock. "Where are you?" "Where you put me," I said. "At the edge." There were no bellows, no theatrical declarations. Only the smallest intake of breath, the sound of someone aware that every syllable now mattered. I returned to the apartment because that's what we had done. Go where the pain had been birthed and find out whether it could be buried there. He opened the door before I could knock. He looked worn, raw, and more honest than he had been in weeks. "You're back," he said. It wasn't a question. I held up the little plastic stick. I'm pregnant. The words fell between us. He went pale, then furious, then terrified. What? When? 2 lines, I said. Not a guess. 1,000 arguments poured from him. Was I sure? Did I take it right? When did I last? He needed dates, a schedule, a forensic map of conception. I watched as he tried to find purchase in facts. His concern felt mechanical, as if he were following a script about responsibilities. You were with Marissa, I said. When I asked you not to hide things anymore, you hid her in a hotel. You booked a flight in her name. You told your friends I was a backup plan. He swallowed. I didn't. You did, I said. I have the receipts, the itinerary, the messages. His jaw worked. I was scared, he admitted finally. She told me she might be pregnant. She said she needed me. I panicked. I didn't know how to tell you. You panicked, I said quietly, and you lied. You made a casino out of our lives and hid the chips. He flinched as if struck. I didn't sleep with her. You told me that. I watched his face for the lie and found the tremor of a truth he couldn't contain. Maybe you didn't. Maybe there's some moral line you didn't cross. But you made choices that put us in this mess. You're pregnant, he said, as if the fact of the child could change the ethics of his actions. I thought of the tiny, furious life unfurling inside me, and some fierce, hot protectiveness rose up like armor. I thought of the way his hands had once smoothed my hair and how those same hands had lied. The child was new and separate and real. It didn't deserve to be an accessory to a man's avoidance. Do you think this makes it better? I asked. He looked at me like a man who had once seen the future in a clear stream and now found it murky. I don't know what to think. There was so much to say. There were so many ways to break. But words alone would not mend the continuity of trust. They were tools, and some tools cannot rebuild what was never built right. You need to go, I said. He stared. Where? Out. For now. I felt almost cruel saying it, but fairness had to begin somewhere. I need time to decide what this means. For me, for the baby. He started to protest. He said things about responsibility, about not abandoning us, about how he could change. Tears left tracks down his cheeks that were not wholly honest, tears of fear as much as remorse. I can't stay, I said. Not like this. He stood in the doorway, the threshold of everything he had nearly ruined. Please, he whispered, don't leave me. Don't ask me to fix you, I said. I don't want to be a project. And then I did something I hadn't planned. I reached into my bag and took out the itinerary with Marissa's name on it. I held it like evidence. You booked this to cover for her, I said. You were going to take her to San Francisco and leave me here as your alibi. He blinked. The confession broke out of him like a cracked dam. I was thinking about leaving, he said. I thought, if I left in a way that made it seem like we were still together, it would be less messy. Stupid. Stupid, yes. Cruel, yes. Human, utterly. I let the anger come, sharp and hot. It burned, but it also clarified. Betrayal had many faces. Infidelity, omission, cowardice. It had all come to visit my life, hand in hand. You can stay and help raise our child and try to earn back trust, I said, voice steady but not unkind. Or you can go. But don't pretend there's an easy path back to what we had. We don't have that road. He looked like a man who had been offered a map with the destination erased. Outside, the city hummed. Life carried on. People laughed in a bar below. A couple argued in a cab. Inside, 2 adults stood with a future they had not consented to in the same way. I don't want to lose you, he said, the plea now rawer, stripped of performance. You already did, I said. You just didn't understand the cost. He left before dawn. He moved like a man stripped of bravado and with the quiet, desperate hope that absence might be penance. I watched him go because leaving felt like the right thing to do in that moment, self-preservation edged with an ache for what had been. When the door closed, the apartment was a museum of our small life, frames with our faces, books we'd read together, a scarf he forgot on the back of a chair. The silence was enormous. I sat down and pressed my palm hard against my belly as if feeling would make the future more concrete. The little plastic test lay on the table like an altar. 2 lines. A life. A responsibility that belonged to me now, and not to the man who had so recently tried to bargain with it. I cried then, slow, raw sobs that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with the strangeness of it all. The way love can be both a shelter and a trap. The way betrayal can redraw a map overnight. The way the tiny heartbeat that would come months hence would not owe allegiance to anyone's cowardice. Outside, morning seeped through the blinds. The city woke. I called Mark first, because he had been there that day at brunch in the way that friends sometimes are. Awkward, loyal, inconveniently honest. He answered in 2 rings, voice rough with sleep. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I laughed, useless and wet. "But I'm okay." "I'll come over," he said. I hung up and sat very still, listening to the house breathe. The future was uncertain. It was terrifying. It was also, impossibly, mine. I thought of the child, a stranger already beloved, and felt a strange courage unfurl. Ethan's betrayal would not define the life I was about to make. I would tell myself that as often as necessary. When the doorbell rang, Mark, on time, with coffee and an expression of solidarity, I opened the door without apology. He looked past me at the apartment like someone stepping into a scene just after the act. He gathered me into a hug that smelled of coffee and clean shirts, and for the first time since the brunch fork hit the plate, I allowed myself to relax a little. "You'll be okay," he said into my hair. Maybe, maybe not. But the truth, raw and jagged and luminous, had arrived. I had been betrayed. I had been left. And I was pregnant. The twist of the story, the child, was both crucible and possibility. Betrayal had changed everything. But the final scene was not a man's confession or a woman's collapse. It was a choice, to leave or to stay, to rage or to forgive, to let the next life be defined by someone else's cowardice, or by the strength of the one who would bring it into being. I pulled back and wiped my face. "We'll figure it out," I said. "I'm here," Mark said. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, I folded the itinerary into a corner and put it where I could see it, a reminder of the man who had been and the life that would outlast him.